Hello, everyone. Today, in our Top 1 Diabetic interview series, we have Roger with us. Go ahead and start us off, Roger. When did you get diagnosed with diabetes?
I was diagnosed when I was 9 years old, about 35 years ago, um, on a fall Friday night in Louisiana. Long time ago. Was just sick, skinny as a rail, just didn't feel good. And my mother brought me to the doctor, and they did a finger prick, and blood wouldn't hardly even come out. So they put me in the hospital immediately, and there you have it.
All right. And that's when they found out you had type 1 diabetes?
Right, that night, yeah, yeah, yes, sir.
What did they tell you when you were first diagnosed?
Well, they didn't really. I didn't really know what was going on. Honestly, I didn't know how sick I was. I had no idea at the time that I was going to have to be doing what I was doing in the hospital when I left there. And I credit a lot of that to my folks. So, um, they just walked in and said, "Look, you're gonna have to take two, three, four shots a day. You're gonna have to um, check your blood sugar 4, 5, 6 times a day." So that was back in the 80s, 82, 80, 84, 85. So that was a long time ago. That's when blood sugar monitors took 5 minutes to read, and they looked like the laptop that you're on, and needles and syringes were that big. And but think technology's come a long way since then.
You said it was 1984?
Yeah, right. It was 35 years ago. So roughly, I think I'm doing my math right.
Yeah, 2019. Close enough, right?
Okay.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's right. If not, I'll take
Okay.
a calculator. We'll do some math later. We're gonna look stupid in this video. But that's all right. That's all right.
That's okay.
Anyways, moving on. So did they tell you about anything about what to eat back then, or did they just tell you take your blood sugar, take your shots?
Well, I think as I can remember, because I think I was 8 or 9 years old, and it was just, this is what you're going to eat. You can eat the same thing that normal people eat, and you're just going to have to take shots to cover it. Back in the day, it was regular and MPH insulin. So I took 2 shots a day, 2 injections. Well, actually three. I took one in the morning, one at noon, and one at night. And then you had to take rapid, to cover your meals, and you had to take the NPH, and that didn't peak, like till 11 or 12 o'clock in the day, and you just had to hope you get it right. And there wasn't CGM, so you couldn't look at your phone and see what your blood sugar was. You had to check it with a monitor, wait 5 minutes, and see. And it was just an absolute roller coaster, for years.
It was an absolute roller coaster.
Yeah, yeah. Fruit, oatmeal, pasta, breads, uh, grape juice. You believe that? Those were all things that diabetic people were told to eat. During that time. That was what's suggested. And some of y'all may remember this. Some of you won't. Everything was exchanges. We didn't count carbs. There were exchanges. One of the most popular snacks uh, at the time was graham crackers and orange juice. You fathom that. You talk about a roller coaster. But yeah, it was just normal food. You didn't have to eliminate anything. And and I honestly don't think that they knew any better. But hopefully, that's changed.
It hasn't. It seems like for the most part. But that's why we're here.
Right. It's changed for some of us, not for some, not for most. But
I'm going. I've been looking at volunteering at a diabetic camp, and the menu. It's basically the kind of things you're describing. The only difference is
right,
they have gluten-free options now, which actually aren't low
right.
carb, just gluten-free. But anyways, I wanted to ask you, how old were you when you were diagnosed? You said 35 years ago.
Um, I was about, I think, 8 years old. I'm 43.
Okay, so it was childhood. All right,
Right. Yes.
all right. And how are you feeling on this typical high carb roller coaster approach?
Um, you know, as a young child, you really you probably didn't notice a lot, but the real lows and the real highs. Um, when I was low, it was just fearful, fright, scary. You did crave food, you did crave sweets. Um, feeling when you got high, 3, 4, 500 at that age, you just felt sick, like stomach virus sick, and just real thirsty, tired, grouchy, bad mood. I mean, all the symptoms, that people feel today. You know,
You're just up and down like that all the time, huh?
right, right, for many years.
How many years?
Um, Well, I mean, through high school and college, I mean, there were some years and weeks and days with decent control. All through high school and college, I did monitor my blood sugar, and I did eat high protein. I ate, what I thought was healthy, and maybe it was, some decent, better choices at the time than some of the alternatives. But you know, I did eat, your breads and your pastas and your oatmeal, and sometimes I would take enough to cover it, and but a lot of the times I wouldn't, and I just got tired of playing that game for years and years and years. As the weight slowly added on, and as I aged a little bit, um, just wanted to get tighter and better control.
So you were actually trying to diet pretty well. You weren't just haphazard with how you're dealing with diabetes, and yet you still weren't getting much better.
No, I wasn't. The A1C was, you know, it probably fluctuated from anywhere from, a 9 to 11, you know, during those high school to college years. And sometimes people would say, oh, that's not that bad for a diabetic. You're young, you're active, you're going to be higher all the time. You're going to have lows, and probably for a long time I did accept that.
God, I gotta say, that's probably one of the most destructive statements that people can make is, oh, that's normal. Because
Right.
when I was a kid, I was told that. I was told I had A1C of 9, that's okay. There's people that do worse. And that makes you justify it in your head, even though that's terrible blood sugars. That's an A1C that's going to certainly lead to complications if you stay with that.
There's no doubt it will. No doubt.
So you were trickling between 9 and 11 despite all the work you put in, despite your dieting, and you also said you're gaining weight.
Oh yeah. Well, and I would say that when you take when you eat whatever you want and you just take insulin to cover for it, uh, and I think I speak for a lot of type 1 diabetics. I know myself. That's where the weight, just um, slowly added on, through the years. Um, I got up to 298 pounds at one time.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah.
that was that like college years?
No, that was 8, 9, 10 years ago. I was a very heavy individual and didn't feel good, and was just eating what I wanted, and was probably taking advantage of the pump that I had, and it's right there. Just take it out of your pocket, pump it, and take whatever you want, and eat that pizza, eat all that stuff, um, and at the time I thought I was happy doing it. I thought it was okay, and but I knew something was off. I knew something was wrong.
You gotta. The pumps are very interesting in that there's almost too convenient because it let you
Oh yeah.
you let yourself get away with a lot more because I'll just push some buttons and it's okay, And if you look at the stats now, there's actually diabetics are actually doing worse than before pumps, believe it or not. It's amazing stuff. So I can say that 100%. I was the same way when I was a kid. Uh,
Especially with the weight gain. You know,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. And double diabetes, which is like type 2 after type 1 because of all the insulin and all the weight gain is becoming a bigger thing even in childhood now.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that's what they, your mainstream. That's what they tell them. Just eat whatever you want and bolus for it. And I disagree 100%. I think it's garbage news, and I think you're doing uh, that person or that child, or that individual, a disservice.
so you were
There is a
gaining,
better way.
you were gaining weight. You were getting real sluggish. Did you end up suffering any complications or any sort of mild issues before going low
No,
carb?
I really the biggest issue was just the weight gain. Just non-active. I would say my sleep wasn't real good, lethargic. Um, didn't have good complexion. I just didn't feel good about myself. But no, I haven't, you know, had any issues that I would say, from the roller coasters or anything like that yet, or not that I know of.
Okay. And when did you finally discover low carb?
It's funny. I kind of stumbled across, some social media groups and Facebook groups, low carb this, low carb that. And I always enjoyed nutrition and eating healthy, so called. And, um, you know, I played around with the Atkins diet. I did the zone diet, the paleo diet. I did all those and did have some different levels of success with some of those. Uh, but the blood sugar control, over a long term consistent basis just wasn't there, and it wasn't what I wanted. And, I did struggle. I mean, I did discover some low carb, high protein, um, networking groups that I found it just made sense to me, lowering your amount of insulin, taking smaller amounts of insulin. The law of small numbers is just something that, when I discovered that and read it and it sunk in, it really did change my life. And I was so passionate about it, and I'm so adamant about it today that, um, I believe it's one of the first things that I tell people. That's just the way I am. I'm kind of type A. I'm very blunt, and, I'll just, anybody that comes to me for advice or any kind of, hey, what do you do? And, eventually I'm gonna get to a point to where I tell them about that. Because, um, that little summary, that little statement can really change somebody's life that is, struggling as a type 1 diabetic, and it covers, um, so much, operating procedures for a diabetic day in and day out. That law of small numbers, taking smaller amounts of insulin, eating, not necessarily smaller amounts of food. I mean, eating the right, kind of foods, and, you're going to have less problems. Big amounts of food, big amounts of insulin, you're going to have some big problems. The right foods or smaller amounts of foods and smaller amount of doses, you're going to have little problems. And uh, the thing that I've discovered on this, if you want to call it keto or low carb, high protein, sometimes it's a combination of both. It really doesn't matter what you call it to me. One thing I've noticed, and even people, that I've given guidance to and worked with, um, doing this way of eating and injecting and taking insulin like this, problems are so much fixable. They're so much, manageable is what I'm saying, and let me give you an example. Uh, if you sit down and eat a giant plate of food and you take, 9 or 10 units on board rapid acting insulin, well, if you go low or you go high from that, that's going to be a big problem that you're going to have to deal with. You know, now if you eat a delicious plate of meat and vegetables and nuts and seeds, a low carb meal, and you take 2 to 3 or 4 units, and you start to rise and low off of that, that's so much more manageable, than your blood sugar spiking up to 3, 4, 500, and then you're just having to chase those stubborn highs with more insulin. And that's where the law of small numbers just comes in and really just changes people's life. I believe personally. I know it did mine.
Absolutely. You're not huddled in a corner at 11 a.m. 11 p.m. waiting to go to bed, and your blood sugar's like 30 or something, and you're shoveling down Smarties and all sorts of candy left and right.
Yeah.
You're not in that world anymore. It's for
Right.
me, if I get low, I can see it coming from a mile away, and I just take like a couple Smarties or like a glucose tab,
Glucose.
just one glucose tab, and I'm back up where I need to be, and it's
Absolutely.
so much easier. It's so much
You
easier.
know, and just having to chasing lows. Uh, you know, I've been in situations where I've been full of food and had a big amount of acting insulin on board, and that you talk about miserable. And then you have to chase it with a bunch of more glucose or other large amounts of food. And uh, and no wonder why your clothes don't fit the next day. I mean, and that just destroys your caloric intake. It just, I mean, you sit down and you did the math on it, you'd be surprised, at how much calories you're taking in, chasing those lows, and that all that insulin you have to inject from the so-called, eat whatever you want and just bolus for it. Um, you know, the law of small numbers.
So when exactly did you started your low carb journey before that, looking at paleo and stuff? But when did you
Right.
like discover like the diabetic type 1 law of small numbers version of it? When did you
Right.
implement that?
I said, and we go back, you asked, 5 years ago, I started experimenting with the low carb and did a few, hot and cold, I'd get off, fall back on, get off. So, really this is the only way. And, I did discover, Bernstein's The Diabetes Solution. And that was about 3 years ago, and I took that, I read it probably a couple times, and really just put, 90% of those practices into play, in my life. And then that's where just, um, that's where the low carb, keto friendly way of eating just kind of adopted to me for me, you know, and, I'm not deprived. I eat, I mean, I eat high calorie. I'm not hungry. I mean, I have a hack for everything, for desserts, for pizzas, for fried chicken. And, you know, uh, I eat, don't get me wrong. Um, but I do follow most of the Bernstein principles, and very little do I stray away from that. And it's just been a big bonus and blessing for me.
Speaking of blessing, let's talk a little about that. So you made the switch. How'd that affect your blood sugars? How'd that affect your A1C in general?
Uh, I would say probably in the first year, my A1C dropped probably 3.5 points. You know, um, I think in the first year it dropped almost two. You know, um, my best A1C today, is a 5.9, and I have one in August. I have an A1C coming up August 1, where I'm hoping to break, under 5.5. So that's a big goal of mine. Um, yeah, so I mean, it lowered drastically. Eating low carb, fasting blood sugars, waking blood sugars. Um, you know, we go on challenges to where we post and we share our blood sugar sometimes 90 minutes to 2 hours after we eat. Um, to because those are some of the most crucial times. After meals. What's your blood sugar done in an hour or 90 minutes? So
That's an interesting challenge. You should do more of that. You should do more of that
yeah.
channel. Anyways, yes, that's fantastic. That's great to hear that you finally found a way to do it so it's not spiking, and you're finding that your blood sugars. You've taken part in those challenges.
Oh yeah, we have a little group, and my motto is as a diabetic and in life is to wake up and just try to win the day. And whatever it is, I mean, we're all type 1 diabetics, or everybody that's watching this, has a loved one that has type 1, and we don't have a choice. We have to wake up and deal with it every day of our life, no matter what, no matter how we feel, no matter what is going on in our life, no matter what other personal issues we have. We are diabetic, and it is absolutely imperative. We have to wake up every day. And you know what? Even if we don't win, you know, you live that day trying to win no matter what, and hopefully you can wake up and win the next day. But um, that's just my mentality. That's just my philosophy, and um, I've been fortunate enough to work with several people, and I truly believe it's a mindset. None of us want to wake up every day, and change our pump sites and check our blood sugars and make sure we eat this and make sure we eat that, and make sure we have glucose tablets over here, and we have to do it. And it's just what we do. It's just what I do.
Absolutely. So when you did the challenge last, do you remember what your posted blood sugar was?
My last 98.
See, proof of the pudding, people, right there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Well, it was a good day. Sometimes, I mean, look, I'm not perfect. My blood sugar does rise sometimes, and it does go low sometimes. But uh, you know, we're all in this to help each other, and I truly believe that accountability is one of the most important things that a diabetic can do. Keeping your blood sugar secret. I'm not saying that you have to publicize your A1C all over social media all the time. And if you want to do that, great. But I truly believe in a system of network and partnership and mentoring, and if you want to call it coaching. Uh, I learned so much from other diabetics on social media and in Facebook groups, of how they, bolus and they extend and they dual wave, and you know, they may have these vegetables mixed with their meats, and these healthy fats, and you never know what you're going to hear or see and just click, and help you. So
Absolutely, 100%. You gotta keep things accountable, and not even just to everyone. If you never share your numbers, you want to be accountable to yourself. You'll be checking constantly and keeping on that, because
right.
a lot of times I had this problem when I burnt out in my teenage years. I thought, oh, if I don't check and I don't see it, then it won't matter. A lot of people get in that in their head that they just don't want to see it. They don't want to see how bad their numbers are. And
Right.
even just getting out of that and realizing, no, you gotta be accountable, at least for yourself. You gotta know where you're at. That's a big step right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, um, now that you've gone low carb, I assume you start losing some weight, right? Can you tell us about that
Yes,
journey?
that's correct. Yeah, I had a big significant weight loss that just kind of fueled everything else. Being active again, just enjoying life again, getting to the gym and working out again. I stumbled across CrossFit, several years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, and that's when it first kind of took off. And affiliates and boxes, or that's what they call them, they were opening up, and one opened up here in my hometown of Alexandria, Louisiana. And I walked in one day on a Saturday morning and said, "Hey, what's going on at this place?" And um, so it was a you're kind of familiar with the nature of CrossFit. It's high intensity, and it is hard work, but it's doable, and it's very scalable for everybody at any age, at any fitness level. And I just enjoyed the nature of it, and the community of it. CrossFit's one of those sports to where sometimes the person that's uh, furthest behind or finishing last is getting cheered on the most, and I just thrived in that environment, and I liked it. And it was just good for me. CrossFit is one of those, sports by nature to where, a lot of the times the workouts are, a certain amount of reps are completed, or there's a workout done for time. And the nature of the sport is where sometimes we're the person that may be taking the longest or struggling the most, and sometimes they're getting cheered on the most by everybody in the gym. And I just adapted to that kind of nature real quick, and it just fit my personality and my work ethic. And I'm an old coach, so I really enjoyed it. So I've been with it ever since.
Fantastic. So, I'm sure CrossFit's a very intense sport, isn't it?
It is. It is.
How do
It
you
is.
manage doing CrossFit with the type 1 diabetes? How do you manage your blood sugars doing that?
It wasn't. It is something that didn't come. It didn't happen overnight. It did take some time. Um, a lot of the time I try to work out or do CrossFit in a fasted state. Um, you know, adrenaline spikes, rapid heart rate, done quickly can sometimes elevate, your blood sugar. So I monitor very carefully, and I always try to plan hours before or the day before, what type of workout I'm going to be doing. If it's just going to, if it's going to be metabolic, or if it's just going to be Olympic lifting. I eat and, um, you know, take my medication, or insulin according to what I'm going to do. And I've found best, through the years, and it's not just CrossFit. It's any high intensity interval training, can elevate your blood sugar to have a little bit of acting insulin on board to kind of combat that adrenaline spike, especially for the first few minutes. Now you get 20, 30, 40 minutes into it, it's an entirely different story. So you always want to have some glucose tablets available, or if you're a pumper, be able to suspend your pump and take it off. And usually most of the time, like I said, it didn't happen overnight, but most of the time, through the last several years, I've been able to manage it pretty well.
So basically, a little bit of insulin on board, sugar in case you go low, and experience doing it all the time,
Right.
constantly, and learning exactly what works over time.
Right. And I think any diabetic that exercises, eh, I mean, if you're, if you're a cyclist or you're a runner, and that's all that you do, through years, you're gonna be able to almost perfect that, and predict, and just the experience with it. But with the high intensity interval training, or slash CrossFit style work, you know, it's constantly changing. There's you go from here, you go from there. So it's a challenging workout. It's a very fun workout, and it is high intensity. So it can be a little bit more challenging to monitor and keep those blood sugars in check. But with technology today and pumps that we have, and access to everything we have, a type 1 can definitely do it.
What kind of technology are you using today?
Uh, Dexcom. I have a Medtronic pump where I'm fixing to um, well, I'm fixing to go to the T Slim, with the basal IQ. I'm real excited about that. And, so I have a Dexcom and fixing to upgrade to the T Slim. I've been with Medtronic for years. I don't do auto mode. I do everything manually myself. I take.
Oh no, it did. Are we good? Okay.
Yeah,
You
there we
did
go.
manually
I'm not.
myself.
I'm.
You said you do it
What's that?
manually yourself.
Right. I inject everything manually. I don't. I don't do the. I don't do the bolus wizard or anything like that. Uh,
You're breaking up a
two,
little
three,
bit.
four units
There
here.
we go. You're good now.
I don't do auto mode. I don't do bolus wizard. Not that there's anything wrong with those, and that they may work for some people, and that's fine. Uh, you know, my carbs are, so low, 30 to 40 a day, to where I just manually, I just know how much to put in myself, and I like to know exactly, what I'm giving myself and what the pump is giving me.
Exactly. I'm more manual these days. I used to be on a pump, but now I'm back to MDI just because it's even
Yeah.
better to know. Because with pumps, sometimes the tube's bent or something's going wrong in it. And I mean, there's nothing more manual than the syringes, but it's very convenient. It's very convenient.
Right.
And
Yeah.
speaking of what you eat, can you tell us what do you typically eat in a day?
I'm probably anywhere, a typical normal day, probably anywhere from 22 to 2300 calories. Um, I do like to, when I wake up in the morning, I eat when I'm hungry. You know, um, if it's, I typically, get 7 or 8 hours of sleep. So, if you wake up between 6 and 7 a.m., and sometimes I'll eat at 9, sometimes I'll eat at 11 or 12. It kind of depends on my work schedule, but um, if I throw the word fasting out there, if that's what I'm doing. Um, but I'll wake up, I'll eat when I'm hungry. I'll typically eat 2, maybe 3 meals a day with, 1 to 2 snacks mixed in. I do some isopure, zero carb whey protein that I do bolus for and extend bolus for. I'll typically do that after a hard workout. It helps keeps my sugars balanced. It doesn't rapidly elevate it. Um, but I eat a lot of meat. Chicken, fish, seafood, a lot of vegetables. Um, I do the fathead pizza. Um, I like to barbecue. I just eat a lot of meat and vegetables, very low carb, keto friendly style.
And would you say the transition from, well, I guess transition's a tough word because it happened over time, but would you say it's difficult for you to be on this approach compared to the high carb approach you're on before?
No, I would confidently say not at all. It's just results driven that I get from it. Just totally outweigh looking at it as being hard to me. My blood sugars are so much better. I sleep better. I feel better. Um, and you know, absolutely. I think this way. I've just made it a point, to where you know, food today, society, the portions and the high calorie and just everything that you can get, from the corner fast food restaurant or wherever you are, just the amount of portions and everything that they give you. I mean, I have a hack for it, um, and the example I'm using, if I end up at McDonald's, I know what to eat there. I make it work. If I end up at a Mexican restaurant, and sometimes those are nightmares for a type 1 diabetic, if they really are. Um, I know how to eat there. And that's what I have a little thing called I make it work. I know how to make it work, and anybody can. It's not just me, you have to want to do it. Your blood sugars have to be a priority. And I think so many of us, and I lived in procrastination for so long. Oh, I'll start tomorrow. I'll start Monday. I'll start over again next week. I'll start eating low carb again. I'll start cutting back, and you're just going to keep on saying that. You're probably not, um, until the doctor gives you some news that you don't want. And hopefully I started before that. I think that I did. Um, but no, it's not hard for me. You know, um, my family is supportive of it and they participate in it a lot with me. They don't always do it. I'm not going to sit here and say that they do, but I make it work.
It's fantastic. It's great to hear. And that's what we're all doing. We're making it work, and it's a lot easier than people make it out to be. That's one thing I always try and emphasize. It's really not that difficult. It seems like it is from the outside looking in, but once you really do it,
Right.
it's so worth it. And it's so easy.
Yeah. Yeah. And look, and Justin, I don't spend hours upon hours in the kitchen every day cooking. I don't. I go to the store. I have my basic, of list of things that I get, and sometimes I'll discover little things in the kitchen as I'm doing things. Hey, this would work. This would be a great, sandwich or a wrap or a breakfast. I make it into this, and um, so you can be your own discoverer, your own chef, and you can create foods and introduce keto friendly, low carb foods, and just make all kind of combinations of stuff. Technology, the internet is full of it. It's the press of a button.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love the idea of meal prep. I love the idea of just keeping it simple. If you keep it simple, you're not going to have a difficult time. One of the biggest fallbacks people end up having is that they end up doing all these concocted crazy recipes and getting all these weird ingredients, and then they burn out because they're trying so hard to cook all these complex things when really all you need is a pan, some butter, a meat, and a vegetable. You don't need to make it hard. It can be as easy as pie.
Right. It can be. And I typically, during the holidays or on a weekend, I would say maybe once, maybe at least once, maybe twice a week, we'll do a recipe, to where we bake something and cook it. That's a keto friendly, low carb meal. But the other times, we're just preparing things, just kind of putting them together. So you don't have to be a chef and cook every night to do this. If you want to, that's great. If you have the time and the energy and I love to cook and barbecue outside. So I mean it's cooking pork chops and steaks and chicken and brisket. I mean that's something that I love to do. I'll cook enough for a week and a half.
Great. So I take you started shedding those pounds. You said you're at almost 300 before, and where are you weighing at now?
I'm right around 220, 225. I fluctuate in that area. I'm about 6'1" and about 6'1", 220 is 225.
And probably more of that's muscle with all the CrossFit you're doing.
Well, maybe so.
That's great though, man. I'm glad to hear that. And I guess you'd say it was a lot easier for you to shed those pounds after following the low carb approach, right?
Right. The combination of just of eating more low carb, smarter, healthier choices. It did slowly come off, but it really peaked. Just when I went to the lower carb, eating style and just and not that insulin is the devil or evil here, but if you have too much of it or you take too much of it, we do the math. We all know what's going to happen, so it just made less sense. And I carried a lot of my weight in my abdominal area, my lower back and that's why, it came off really quick and, doing the CrossFit, eating the low carb, high protein, I guess keto friendly, it really came off quick and I've been able to keep it off,
That's good. That's fantastic to
Yeah.
hear. I believe we'll cover most of the basic points, so I'm going to ask my favorite final question. What's something you'd like to tell anybody watching this right now? Just some advice or something you learned? What would be the number one thing I'd tell anyone watching?
Well, I would guess, Justin, I'm going to have to say, anybody that's out there watching this, that, if you've tried this diet, you've tried that diet. I truly believe that this is the better way for us to practice and eat every day. Now, I'm not judging anybody, or if there's type ones out there that have decent, or I don't want to say decent, that have good control and you're eating what you want, then that's great. I choose not to fight that battle. I want to be confident and I want to be sure that I know exactly what I'm putting in my body, exactly what it's going to do to my blood sugar. I don't always get it right, but I win a lot more now than I used to. So there is a better way. I believe it's the only way. I mean, I've had, like I said, I've lowered my A1C by points doing this.
Can you repeat that last sentence?
I eat. I'm full. But I'm trying to remember what I said.
You said
I think that
you said I win a lot more than I used to, and something about your A1C.
Yeah. Well, I win a lot more today with better blood sugars than I did several years ago, even 2 or 3 years ago, trying to just eat what I wanted, eating healthy and just taking the insulin to cover it all. When I really adjusted to this way and bought into it as a lifestyle that I was comfortable with, not waking up having to, I don't consider myself on a diet at all, but I win a lot more doing this and eating this way than I did the other way.
And your A1C, well, your best run so far has been 5.9, you said?
Was 5.9, and I have another one coming up in August that I'm really looking forward to.
That's fantastic. Well, let me know what that is, and we'll be able to update the video with that for sure.
Yeah, we will.
Well, I believe we'll end it there. Thank you, Roger, for telling us your story today. I really appreciate it. You have a really good one,
No
and
problem.
it's good to see people, type 1 diabetics, that are doing CrossFit and intense workouts like that and still managing it pretty well. Because exercise can always be a scary quagmire, even people like me doing low carb. So thank you again for telling your story, and I hope this reaches a lot of people and helps change a lot of hearts.
We'll see. And I want to give a little special shout out to my crew at Win the Day Nutrition. They're a lot of fun. They're great. I've seen a lot of lives changed and impacted. I've seen a lot of mindsets developed on winning and, winning the everyday dealing with diabetes and food. So I'm real proud of all of them, and y'all keep up the hard work.
Is that a Facebook group?
Yes, it is.
All right.
It's a.
Can I link it in the description for this?
Sure, if you want.
Great, I'll do that. We'll link to that for sure. Because I'll want to check it out myself. But anyways, we'll leave it at that, my friend. Thank you so much again for your time, Roger.
No problem.
This is how Roger tamed his type 1.